What's up guys, it is Charzzariah and welcome back to another Dark Souls lore video for Dark Souls month. Last time we took a look at Ornstein and Smough, and today we are going to take a look at Gwyn, his children, and those would be Guinevere, Gwyndolin, and the Sun's Firstborn. And when we look at the Sun's Firstborn, we're also going to look at Andre of Astora, and we're going to look at Solaire of Astora as well. So let's jump straight into it, and let's start off with the main guy himself, Gwyn, the Lord of Sunlight. So, from the intro movie, we can tell that Gwyn was one of the four lords who claimed a soul at the dawn of the fire, along with Nito, the Witch of Izalith, and the Pygmy. It is also known that he fought the dragons with his faithful knights. Notice how it does not say black or silver knights. But from the intro we can see that there is a gleam and a shine to their armor, so I think we can draw from that they are probably silver knights. We do know that they became black knights when Gwyn and his knights fought the chaos demons, but that's later on in the timeline. Anyway, throughout the game we hear about Gwyn from many different people, such as Frampt, Karth, Solaire, Guinevere, Gwyndolin, and of course the narrator from the intro, but anyway. We hear from many people that talk about him as well, that he went to the kiln of the first flame to link the fire so he could sustain his age of fire. We hear when you speak to Guinevere, before getting the Lord's vessel, she says, "Since the day Father his form did obscureth, I have awaited thee." So firstly, we see she says, his form did obscureth, meaning his form was obscured. And obscured can mean to make dark, dim, or indistinct. So from this we can take that when Gwyn went to link the flame, he obscured himself when he did so. He hid himself away and began to darken his form, or make his form more indistinct. Now many of you know who have gotten to the final boss of the game that when you see Gwyn, he's no longer the Lord of Sunlight or the Lord of Flame. He is the Lord of Cinder. And he also looks like he is hollowed as well, because his eye, there's no proper eye in his sockets, they're just like black holes, I guess. But moving on to what we hear from Karth. Now, I did bring this up in my little video about New Londo, but I will bring it up again for those who haven't seen that one. So Karth tells us that Lord Gwyn trembled at the dark, clinging to his age of fire, and in dire fear of humans, and the Dark Lord who would one day be born amongst them. Lord Gwyn resisted the course of nature, sacrificing himself to link the fire and commanding his children to shepherd the humans. Pretty much, yeah, he's the reason that there are all the undead locked up in the asylum. Going on, Karth says, "Gwyn has blurred your past to prevent the birth of the Dark Lord. I am the primordial serpent. I seek to right the wrongs of the past, to discover our true Lord. But the other serpent, Frampt, has lost his sense and befriended the Lord Gwyn. Undead warrior, we stand at the crossroad. Only I know the truth about your fate, and you must destroy the fading Lord Gwyn, who has coddled fire and resisted nature, and become the fourth Lord, so that you may usher in the Age of Dark." Now, we can take so many different lore facts about Gwyn from this, but also about the player character, but once again, that was already covered in a previous little video. It is made quite clear that Gwyn feared the dark, and he wanted his Age of Fire to continue as long as he possibly could. So that is why he got his followers to first gather the undead and lock them in the asylum, so that the chosen undead could never reach Lordaeron, and he could try and sustain his Age of Fire for as long as possible. Karth also says that Gwyn has blurred your past, and we can make out from that he would have used Gwyndolin and Frampt to do this when you got to Lordaeron, because they both say that you are the chosen undead and you must succeed Gwyn and link the fire, instead of what Karth tells you, telling you that you are the Dark Lord. That is all I really want to say about Gwyn for now. Those are the major points. I do plan to talk about his followers, but that's not going to be a part of Dark Souls month. But anyway, let's talk about his children. So, we can tell that Gwyn had 3 children, and those were his firstborn, who was a son, Guinevere, who was a daughter, and Gwyndolin, who was born a son, but raised as a daughter, which is a bit weird. Because we know the most about Guinevere and Gwyndolin, let's talk about those two first. So we know Guinevere was Gwyn's second born after his firstborn. Oh wow, really? Anyway. and she is considered the Princess of Sunlight, and she has her own covenant known as the Princess Guardians as well. And I think I covered this in Ornstein and Smoke's lore video, but I do think that Ornstein and Smoke, maybe not Smo, but probably Ornstein, I think he is a member of the Covenant because they are defending Guinevere, and this might not be considered proper lore stuff, but in one of the themes for the PS3 that was the Princess Guardian, you can see Ornstein coming in to, I guess, meet with Guinevere or just to check on her. So I think he might be a member of the Princess Guardian Covenant, but that's just speculation. Also, this could all just be seen as a final test before you get the Lord Vessel as well. Either way, we know that the Guinevere they are defending is not the real Guinevere, because we can find out from the description of the Ring of the Sunlight Princess that the Princess of Sunlight Guinevere left Anor Londo along many other deities and later became wife to flame god Flan. The first question I have to raise when reading this is, who the hell is Flan? Because we hear about all these other gods like Fina, Velka, Gwyn, Allfather Lloyd, and there is some descriptions of them, especially for Velka and Fina. We've got Lautrec. For Allfather Lloyd we have the Way of White Covenant, but this is the only time we ever hear of Flan being mentioned. So yeah, that's a bit odd. Maybe we'll get to see him in Dark Souls 2, I don't know. Anyway, let's talk about the person who is keeping the illusion of Guinevere alive in Anor Londo and keeping the sun's illusion alive in Anor Londo as well, Gwyndolin. So now we know that Gwyndolin was born with an affinity for the moon, and that is why he was given the name he was given as well. Gwyn also raised Gwyndolin as a daughter due to his affinity for the moon as well. If we look up the meaning of the word Gwyn, in Welsh it means white. So the Way of White, Way of Gwyn. So yeah, that's kind of interesting. And Dolan, the other part of Gwyndolin's name, means ring in Welsh as well. And we know that the Way of White are followers of Gwyn, and their symbol is a white ring. So this would appear to symbolize that even though Gwyn raised Gwyndolin as a woman, he is still seen as a worthy member of his family, and Gwyn still cared for him, because I think Gwyndolin felt a little inadequate as a son due to the fact that he was raised as a woman. Anyway, in-game, you can only find Gwyndolin when you get the Dark Moon Seance ring from the Catacombs. What is it doing in the Catacombs? I don't know, but we do see that it is once again in front of a statue that appears fairly, not regularly, but in certain places in the game where you can feel a presence from Gwyn or one of his children. Like in Firelink Shrine, you see it at the very back of where Frampt normally is. You also see it at the Sunlight Altar, and then finally you see it in the Catacombs. The statue appears to be a woman, and we're not sure who the woman is. Many people think it could be Gwyn's wife or Gwyn's mother, and there is a child in the woman's arms, and that child is holding a sword. The sword does not look like the Great Sword, but it could still be a baby Gwyn, which would enforce the fact that it would be Gwyn's mother. But the sword does look similar-ish to the Sunlight Straight Sword. It doesn't look exactly like it. The hilt is a bit longer, but it could be the Sun's Firstborn, seeing as the Sun's Firstborn was a god of war, and he relied on weapons a lot. But we will get into that when we talk about the Sun's Firstborn. Anyway, yes, this ring can be used to get to the tomb of Lord Gwyn, where Gwyndolin looks over the blades of the Dark Moon Covenant. And it's also believed that he works alongside Velka, because Velka oversees the Book of the Guilty, and Gwyndolin sends out his Dark Moon Knights to kill those who break the laws of the gods. It can also be found out that Gwyndolin is associated with Kingseeker Frampt, and he wants you to succeed Lord Gwyn as well, and link the fire. So now here we come to one of the most talked about lore facts in the whole, or lore topics in the whole game. Gwyn's firstborn son. Now we only have limited knowledge from the Ring of the Sun's Firstborn and the Sunlight Medal, that actually talks directly about the sun's firstborn. So let's look at those facts first. The description of the ring says, Lord Gwyn's firstborn, who inherited the sunlight, once wore this ancient ring. Boost strength of miracles. Lord Gwyn's firstborn was a god of war, but his foolishness led to a loss of the annals and rescinding of his deific status. Today, even his name is not known. So all we really know is that whoever this guy is, he made some sort of mistake that eventually resulted with him losing his god status, because that's what deific means. If you're a deity, you can also be seen as a god. But if we read the description of the sunlight metal, we see that the old god of war still watches over his warriors, them being the sunlight warriors. So we know he is still active in the sunlight warriors covenant. We also see that he had large respect for weapons, and this can be seen in the description of the Great Sunlight Spear, where it says, the weapon of the god of war who inherited the sunlight of Lord Gwyn, but had respect only for arms and nothing else. So we see that he's more of a weapon user, not so much for the miracles. So now we come to the speculation part, and more specifically the speculation around who he is. Now I'm going to talk about only two characters, and the reason I'm only talking about two is these are the two that I actually believe could be the sun's firstborn. And these two are Solaire of Astora and Andre of Astora. So let's start with Solaire, who is personally my favourite character in the whole game. So, Solaire is first seen in-game at the end of the Drake Bridge in the Undead Burg. He says that he is an adherent of the Lord of Sunlight. Now, adherent means a follower or a supporter of someone, so Solaire is basically saying he's a supporter of the Lord of Sunlight. This could both be seen as evidence that he is and that he isn't the sun's firstborn, because it was probably Gwyn who took away his godlike status, so the fact that he is a follower of Gwyn may contradict that. But it also could be that even though his father took away his godlike status, he still had respect for his father, and he wanted to do his father proud. So there are two ways that can be taken. Personally, in my mind, I think that it's a bit contradictory to the fact that he is the sun's firstborn, but that is just me. Anyway. Now, the first hint we get that he could be the sun's firstborn is that he is a member of the Sunlight Warriors, and it is also believed by some that he's the leader of the Covenant, because after you see him in Anor Londo, he moves to the Sunlight Altar for a while, and if you talk to him, he can initiate you into the Covenant. There are a few other characters that can initiate you into the Covenant, such as Alvina for the Forest Hunters, Gwendolyn for the Dark Moon, and Petrus for the Way of White. Now, we know Petrus isn't the leader of the Way of White, that would belong to Allfather Lloyd, but we know that Alvina is the leader of the Forest Hunters and Gwendolyn the leader of the Dark Moons. So, it's a bit up in the air. Also, the Ancient Dragon in Ash Lake initiates you into the Pass of the Dragon, and we know for certain that he is the leader of that covenant. But I'm getting sidetracked. So, now that we know that the sun's firstborn still watches over the covenants, so there is a possible link there. Another link comes from one of Solaire's dialogues, where he states, "What if I am seen as a laughingstock, a blind fool without reason?" Well, I suppose they wouldn't be far off. Now, firstly, who is they? Like, who is the they that he is referring to? Could it be the other NPCs in the game? If so, this would make some sense, but most people believe that he is talking about the gods. And if he is, then it would fit into him being the sun's firstborn as well, because he was stripped of his godlike status, and it should be noted that Solaire is looking for his own son. Perhaps to prove himself to his father, or just to prove to himself that he is still worth something. Anyway, let's look at his armor, and from the description of his sword, shield, and helm and armor of the sun, it states that he has no real special powers about him, which all his strength also comes from his own training. The description of the sword states, "This standard longsword belonging to Solaire of Astora is of good quality, well forged, and has been kept in good repair. Easy to use and dependable, but unlikely to live up to its grandiose name." Now we can see that this points to him being the sun's firstborn, but it also points to him not being the sun's firstborn. When we read the description from the shield, it says, Shield of Solaire of Astora, Knight of Sunlight, decorated with a holy symbol, but Solaire illustrated it himself, and it has no defined powers of its own. As it turns out, Solaire's incredible prowess is a product of his own training, and nothing more. This strongly points to Solaire being the Sun's firstborn, because when the Sun's firstborn lost his god status, he would have lost his godlike abilities as well, so he would have had to build up and train, become as strong as he once was, just like our Sun Bro over here. Lastly, we will look at the armor of the Sun that says, Solaire's incredible prowess must have come from rigorous training alone, for his equipment exhibits no special traits. So once again reinforcing the idea that Solaire's strength is of his own making. I think I will leave my speculation on Solaire there, because I want you guys in the comments to talk about this stuff as well, and if I pretty much spill out everything I know, it may not leave much for other people. But what am I saying? This is Dark Souls. Of course, there are millions of differing opinions on millions of different topics in this game, so I think the comments section of this video will be quite interesting as well. So lastly, we come to the blacksmith Andre of Astora. Now there are a couple of things that make it likely that he is the Sun's firstborn, and there are more things that state that he is rather than he isn't, but I will cover some of those shortly. So, for starters, he seems to be older than Solaire, and he also looks more similar to Gwyn, and the firstborn son would have been banished a long time ago. But, as we know from Solaire, in Lordran, time is distorted and heroes fade in and out of existence. But Andre is also a blacksmith that can use a large assortment of embers, like the Divine Ember and Large Divine Ember, the Large Ember and the Very Large Ember, and finally the Occult Ember. And the Occult Ember is very interesting, because occult weapons we use to hunt the gods. So if Andre was the firstborn son, could this mean that he was endorsing warriors to go out, create these occult weapons, and assault the gods with them? Quite interesting. We can tell that there definitely were some expeditions to take the powers from the gods, as can be seen from the effigy shield that was used to try and steal Nito's power. Anyway, so we know that the Sun's firstborn was good with weapons, and Andre is certainly not lacking in the weapons department. Also, there is a dialogue from Andre that says, "The nice thing about weapons? They never betray you." This could very likely be the Sun's firstborn feeling betrayed by the gods for what they did to him, taking his god status away. Also, there was some cut content from the game when it was in development where Andre was supposed to move a statue, and you would have gone through this, through the pathway he opened up, into the kiln of the first flame. So there is a lot of cut content that also demonstrates Andre being the Sun's firstborn. So, what do I believe personally? I believe it is possible for either of these two gentlemen to be the Sun's firstborn. I do personally lean more towards Solaire, because I definitely think Andre was intended to be the Sun's firstborn, but that content was cut from the game, so I think Solaire is now a more likely candidate. However, both of them could just be red herrings, and the Sun's firstborn could be someone like, I don't know, Lautrec or Artorias. They also have made a couple of mistakes through their lives that could be seen as reasons for their godlike status being removed, although Artorias was one of Gwyn's knights, so I don't believe he was the Sun's firstborn. Also, I use that same logic to rule out Ornstein. Also, in the chapel in Anor Londo, there are 3 statues, one of Gwyn, one of Guinevere, and one that's missing. And it is stated that when the Sun's firstborn was removed of his god status, all mentions of him were erased in Anor Londo as well. And there is a statue of Ornstein as you enter Anor Londo. Now this could just be Ornstein putting it back up, going, you know what, I'm the Sun's firstborn, people need to know who I am, but I don't think that's it. I personally believe that the Sun's firstborn is either Solaire or Andre. But now I'm going to throw it over to you guys. Go down into the comment section and talk about, any topic that you saw today in today's video, or any topic that interests you in general. Next time in the lore, we are going to be talking about the Covenants, And then finally, for the last lore video of Dark Souls month, we're going to be talking about Ulasil, Chester, Alvina, Sif, Manus, Artorias, Kieran, and Goth. I know in the first lore video I called her Kiaran, but I think it's actually called Kieran. I don't know, because it's spelled C-I-A-R-A-N, so Kiaran. I don't know. But yep, thank you so much for watching and listening. I look forward to seeing you in the next video for Dark Souls month. A couple of people have asked what's happened with the Dark Souls 2 Collector's Edition unboxing video. I'm hopefully getting that in soon, because at this point in time, I'm still unsure of the release date, because this is being recorded at the very beginning of Dark Souls month, and a couple of people have asked about that. So I'm getting the PC version, so I can give you the first 20 minutes my impressions. So as soon as I know when that video is coming out, I will let you guys know. Probably on Facebook and Twitter, so links to those will be in the description below as well. Thank you so much for watching. This has been Charzzariah, and I look forward to see you next time. Peace.